Hello, everybody. So, I hope you people appreciate that I had to create a user disk for the first time in decades. Well, I did make that user disk. So, welcome back to Lagoon, and now we will be doing the fan-translated version of the Sharp X68K version. This version actually only was released a few weeks ago. But hey, welcome back to Atland. Okay, so the story of this version is somewhat different and much more extensive than in the SNES version of the game. Basically, 7 mages accidentally summoned a demon when they tried to summon a god, and 3 of them died in the fighting. However, one of the 7, Zera, decided to seek out the Prince of Darkness in order to control its power for himself. So, another one of the 7, Matthias, decided to also seek out the hero of the Moonblade, who was Nassel. And then Nassel was trained for 4 years, and now he's come back. I'll put a full link to the translated story portions of the manual in the video description, but those are the basics. That's right, Nassel has a family in this version. Mom, sis, and we'll be meeting his dad sometime. In fact, pretty much everyone here in town has something to say about Nassel coming back after so long. Because, you know, he's part of the community in this version. He's not conceived by the power of heaven this time. Okay, so a couple of things about the Sharp version of Lagoon. Every old computer game had some kind of copy protection, like a password derived from the manual, or something in the game lore that you could only get from reading the materials, or code wheels. In Lagoon, the copy protection is the fact that you need a password to make the user disk. Now, for those of you who are too young to know what that means, it means that if you didn't have the password, you weren't allowed to save the game. And seeing as Lagoon is very much an Ys-like, this version anyway, dying is not optional. Can't save, every death sends you back to the beginning of the whole game. Yeah, I love that text message sound. Now, let's see what these people have to say. Well, that sounds like a problem. By the way, I'm using a very unusual control scheme for this, in that I am using the tried and true controller and keyboard scheme. Oh, was he now? Because, you see... See, how do I put this? The Sharp X68K's keyboard has keys that other keyboards do not. So I have to find some other way to use those functions, because the functions that are on those keys that my keyboard doesn't have are things like attacking and jumping. So we're going to have to go in there and rescue Giles again. But things work a little bit differently in this version. First, we need to talk to the mayor, because we forgot to do that. Yeah, the thing is, it's basically been 5 years since I've played any kind of Lagoon, so getting lost will also not be optional. Sorry. Well, we're gonna have to look into that. Ah, these animated conversation portraits. We have heard about this? Gee, thanks. Oh, the castle is actually attached to a royal this time. One of the things about the original version of Lagoon is that the game's story is somewhat more clear about, oh, just about everything. The blah blah and blah blah, but it blah blah, so blah blah. Okay, we can't read. At least not very well. You know, you'd think that being trained by a wizard Nassel would be better about that sort of thing. So we can buy all of the equipment. Plus we have a little cash left over for healing potions if we wanted any. Oh yeah, the manual's description of the Iron Shield is... Yeah, people call it an Iron Shield, but it's actually a wooden shield covered with an iron face. So now we're going to save. We have 3 save slots, unlike the 1 save slot we had in the SNES version. So that makes things a little less nerve-wracking for what I'm doing here. Okay, there are some fairly significant gameplay differences between this version and the SNES version. In that, we are using East combat, friends. Draw your sword, hit enemies off-center, slam them into the wall, and destroy them. However, it actually does borrow a little bit from the Hide-Lide, in that if your sword isn't out, you can bounce some enemies off of you. Your defense is increased or something like that. However, you need to get your sword out to actually damage enemies. However, this exposes you to danger. Oh, and by the way, I cannot describe how much better this feels than the combat in the SNES version of Lagoon. I mean, this is obviously more simplistic, but it's also actually not garbage. If you've played any kind of old-style Ys game, you will be just fine in this game. However, there is a little piece of mechanics that can surprise people that move to this from the SNES version. Like I stated in the previous time we went through this, in the SNES version, if your attack value is too low, below the enemy's defense, the game gives you pity damage, about 2 damage a swipe. This game does not give you pity damage. If your attack is too low, you are not going to hurt that enemy. And this also extends to bosses. So this game is kind of like Crystallis in that there's definitely a case of you must be this tall to win. I mean, that was also the case in the really early Ys games, but they got better about that later on. Also, I think your walking speed is slightly faster in this version of the game. And Nassel's walking animation is a little less static than it was in the SNES version. So I did some more looking into about the actual technical specs of the Sharp version of the game, and I'm going to have to take back what I said the first time around. In 1990, the SNES probably wouldn't have been able to handle everything this game did, because the cartridge size was not large enough to handle the full Lagoon. If Lagoon waited until the 16 megabit cartridge had come along, Link to the Past would have eaten its lunch. I mean, seriously. I actually like this version of Lagoon a bit, but I am not denying how grand Link to the Past is. Even if it's not my favorite of the old-style Zelda games. So another difference here is that because of the different combat system, you cannot jump and attack at the same time. But that's really just common sense. I don't really see this game's bump system working too well with jumping. Though it does make certain boss fights a bit trickier. Yay, 10 gold. One of the things about this version, though, is that the SNES version had much higher prices for healing items. Like the healing herb that restored all health, which was called the Elixir. That cost $7.50 in the SNES version, whereas in this version it costs $200, and enemies still give the same amount of gold, I think. So the game is a bit more generous in that regard. Also, the Sharp version has kinda higher quality music. But that's only to be expected because the Sharp had basically the same sort of sound hardware as Capcom arcade machines of the period, like Final Fight and Street Fighter 2. In fact, the Sharp had near arcade-perfect ports of Final Fight and Street Fighter 2. This looks like the way forward. And I gained a level. Perfect. So we picked up the healing potion on the way here. Just have to jump at him at the right spot. Because the jump button is also the conversation button, so things are gonna look a bit silly. You bet I do. Yep, we couldn't open it. Ah, yeah, the Priory, or, the worship site, was it in the first game? The SNES game? Anyway, we don't have to lead Giles back to town this time, so we can just go back ourselves at whatever speed we want. I don't know why the SNES version added that, I wouldn't even call it an escort mission to the game. I guess we can just blame Kemco if we want to. We can blame them for so much, I think. Combat feels so good in this one in comparison. The thing is, while there is mandatory grind in Lagoon of any stripe, this version of the combat makes it much easier. One of the reasons I really wanted to play a translated version of this game is because this is, first off, an East clone, and, you know, my brand. And secondly, you see a lot of, like, Zelda's clones, or Metroid clones, or Castlevania clones, but you don't really see that many clones of classic-style East games anywhere, and I think Lagoon is one of the very, very few out there. Now we see if I can remember where the Priory is. Nope.
Well, I'm gonna need a healing potion anyway. Ah, these animated boxes, so good. Yeah, that could be a problem. Oh, thanks. But we really should take her advice. You bet we do. Yeah, destined hero of the Moonblade and all that. Okay, this bread is a key progression item without which we will not be able to have finished the game. I'm gonna let that sink in for a moment. So now we get to take on Samson, who is still the first boss of this game. Pretty much all of the bosses except Ella are still here, but they are a bit different in some way or another. So we're going to save here before we take on our first boss. And let's see how it goes. Okay, Samson does not cause any earthquakes this time, but he doesn't need to. Also, he has front, forward, and back sprites, and we can do nothing to him. Yeah, we can't hit him without taking damage ourselves, but I think we can grind our way through and try it again. Back in a moment, folks. Okay, one grind skip later, we gained a couple of levels. Let's equip our potion and go at him. Alright, Samson, your time has come. Your time has not come. Okay, let's try that again. We are now level 7. That should be enough, I hope. Let's get him out of that corner so we are not crushed to death. Okay, let's do this. Well, we ended up getting crushed to death anyway. But I know I can beat him at this level. I just need to do it not wrong. So that's the gameplay struggle of this version of Lagoon. You must be at the right level to keep the boss's contact damage from destroying you. Oh yeah, for some reason, sometimes your attacks do more damage than normal, and I haven't figured out what triggers it. Maybe it's just random. But hey, down he goes! Yeah, it doesn't show the boss name in this version of the game. And we got the fire crystal! And the entrance doesn't collapse behind us in case we forgot to get the bread. So, I'll be seeing you next time when we do some more Lagoon, and I'll do grinding off camera. Let's save our game, and see you next time, folks.